Welcome to the panel Empowering Web3 Users. We're going to be chatting a little bit about user-centric design and UX. Let's do a little round of introductions here. I can start off. My name is Jimmy. I'm the ecosystem head for Concordia, a modular risk management layer. And we go down the line here. Roy?
All right. I'm the first to the line. Cool. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, everyone. So my name is Roy. I'm the co-founder for Up Network, which is Web3 abstraction layer for mobile and blockchain. So we're shipping our first mobile flagship Up Mobile in coming weeks. Thanks for having me here.
Hi, so my name is Mathieu. I am founder at Linera. Linera is a decentralized infrastructure for real-time on-chain user interactions.
Hey guys, I'm Glenn. I'm the co-founder of Echelon. We're a move-based money market.
Hey guys, I'm Nirav. Thank you to the Movement team for having us. I'm the founder of Camp Network, and we're a modular identity layer.
Hi, I'm Manny. I'm from Across. We're an intent-based interoperability layer. Thank you.
Lovely. So we have a couple of different kind of approaches to dealing with UX, I'm sure here. We have a couple of consumer angles. We have a more kind of DeFi-driven angle as well. So would love to understand a little bit better if maybe you can just go through a little bit in a couple of minutes how your project is approaching the kind of user-centric design in what you're doing in Web3, and if you've faced any challenges in doing so in particular.
Sure. I can start. Yeah, I think that one of the biggest motivation for us to do a mobile blockchain / mobile Web3 smartphone is present a central solution and support the hub for all the Web3 consumer Web3 utilities. Right now, like everybody uses their mobile phone, right? None of the crypto people don't use their smartphone, but your Apple and Google device will never ever feature your apps. You have to figure out ways to go around here and there. But we own the phone. We built Up Network on top of it with Movement, but also support our Up Store so that we can feature various of the dApps as well as DP devices on the phone and use that as a centric hub to help the discovery of the projects, utilities, right? And the various use cases and innovations on the device where developers here and there can use different modules of everyone's and to deliver their service to hundreds of thousands of millions of users in our lifetime. Now, there are 7 billion mobile phone users, and 50% of Binance traders are trading on mobile device. So we think now, since the whole ecosystem and the whole infra has been mature in 2024, and we need a phone that everybody use, but presented in front of them to live with them 24/7 as the hub and a go-to for user experiences.
Is there anything in particular that you're seeing there that has become more of a challenge than something else? Because education of the industry is something that's talked about a lot. And I can imagine that, for example, geography plays a big part in that, especially when it comes to adoption of the technology itself. Is that something that you see in how you're shaping your UX path forward here, where you look at certain geographies and then kind of what challenges might be posed there?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Web3 is being notorious, not in the good way, for user experience, right? Because people think people are motivated by incentives, UX is secondary consideration. Well, we think it's not because people was never previously offered a chance to look for a adoption, especially in the recent so-called post-VC era. We see a lot more developer coming from traditional coming to see how can I build a Web3 enabled application to the consumer. And I think people starting from like a geo, like from Asia or from North America, willing to take an extra effort. But we think as a developer for the infra, we should think about how we can support these different SDKs and kit for people to ease the development so that everybody can thrive through this ecosystem. Wonderful.
And Mathieu, your thoughts about as well the challenges that you're kind of facing and how you're
Yeah, so at Linera, our thesis is that people want low latency user interfaces. So if you look at so React.js is one of those. React.js is very famous JavaScript library for reactive applications in Web 2. If you look at it has it's credited for 21 million projects on GitHub only. So it's a massive adoption. It's one of the most successful open source projects out there, and it really shows that people are used to just using reactive applications. So that means applications that can refresh themselves when the state of the backend changes, right? And so what we're looking at is how to create to enable reactive applications in Web3 as well, while retaining what we like about Web3, which is decentralization and a high level of security, in particular for the users. And so the way we do that is by redesigning entirely what it means to have a decentralized execution layer. And so we really looking at the way we structure blockchain infrastructure and redesigning that, like changing the way transactions are organized. And specifically, what we do is we give users their own small chains of blocks. And so it's doing that. So what's really interesting is suddenly it puts back the user and the client back at the center of the protocol. And so giving users the ability to have a small full node for their chain of blocks. It's kind of like it's really interesting. So it's kind of going back to what the origin of Web3, where initially the vision was that people would run full nodes for the major protocols, and they would really be in charge of the security of their own client and their own decisions. But then it turns out that the major blockchains have like really large blocks, really high hardware requirements. And so down the road, basically, it became impossible for users to run their own Ethereum node or Bitcoin node. And so suddenly the clients were started using API providers and third parties to manage the interactions with the chain. But that prevents our thesis that prevents low latency user interactions down the road. So that's what we're solving for.
Understood. And Glenn, if you're looking at something that you're doing with Echelon, when you look at Matthew's kind of journey that he's going through, what are you seeing on the Echelon side of things, and the fact that you're building like this money market that is very actively geared towards a user base that is going to be using kind of DeFi and crypto here?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important for us as builders, whether it's in DeFi or not, is really just taking feedback from our core user base and integrating it into the product. Ever since we launched our first version of testnet, we've made multiple changes to the UI. We've added new functions on both the backend, smart contract layer, as well as like the middleware for different views. Our goal is really to make it as easy as possible for people to interact with the protocol and earn yield in a variety of different ways, right? So for example, we introduced a leverage staking product where instead of having to manually enter all the transactions yourself, and it takes about 20 to get into like a decently looped position, we abstracted that all the way on the back end. And because of like the low latency and the cost of the chain, which we're building on, we're able to do this all for 1/10 of a cent and let users enter and exit these positions in less than 1 second, which is a feature we've been requested many times from our users since we launched. And it's something that we just keep an open mind to. We always have a channel in the Discord for support, feedback. We speak to our biggest users and investors, on a bi-weekly basis, basically, and ask them what they want to see. We're actively working on a new feature for paying down debt with existing collateral without having to withdraw assets using flash loans, at the request of some of our investors. So I think that's one of the biggest things for us, is just keeping an open mind and listening to what other people want and asking them, and giving them a venue to give you that feedback for what you're doing. Now, obviously, when you're building something a bit bigger, like a chain itself, you kind of have to start from the ground up with like that user experience in mind. So you think about Sui or Aptos or Solana, they saw a 0 to 1 improvement in the latency and speed and throughput of a chain. And obviously the user experience, the feedback comes a bit later along when you're building a dApp. It's a bit more reactive in the sense that you don't have to spend 4 years of engineering work to like launch the underlying L1, but you can sort of make change to the smart contracts a bit easier. But yeah, that's sort of our biggest approach, is like integrating feedback and also like taking features that we like from other protocols and sort of like integrating those components.
Got it. And you mentioned testnet there, and I'd like to see as well, maybe either Manny or Nirav can give a little pointer on how important is this distinction between going through testnet rushing towards a mainnet or doing some kind of beta in between in terms of getting that feedback from the users and actually applying it into what you're building out. That's something that I come across a lot, but people are asking, should we go to testnet? Should we do how many rounds of testnet? Should we do like a early mainnet? What are we going to be doing here? And yeah, we'd like to see how that influences your kind of UX vision.
Yeah, go for it.
I think the whole point of testnet is to actually break it. Ideally, you're prepping to build, a multi-billion-dollar protocol, which usually has, multi-million users at the end of the day. Whether if you're building a chain in the case of us, you want as many dApps building on top of it that are actually going to onboard the next iteration of users to the blockchain in general. That means that insofar as you believe that to be true, testnet is meant to be broken because everything that should go wrong should go then wrong. Because if you go wrong during mainnet, then you're completely royally screwed, to say the very least. And so during testnet, I think the most important thing is, number one, encourage your dApps building on top of you to actually deploy. A lot of people think, oh, it's testnet, it's free money, nobody really cares about it. That's not the case at all. At camp, one of the things that we implore our teams to do is actually deploy, because otherwise, they're just going to keep pushing it back until mainnet. And by that time, it's too late at that point to have any traction. And so your early dApps that actually deploy in testnet end up being some of your biggest dApps in the ecosystem, because those are the ones that the community finds most relevant and most important. So if I was doing it, and I guess the way we are doing it is we basically do a testnet and then see what goes wrong every day. Something has to go wrong every day, just from a KPI perspective. And then once you're officially ready, that's when you can launch a mainnet. But I think testnet's absolutely mandatory, to say the very least. I've never been a huge fan of the incentivized testnet. I always think just going to public testnet is better. And a large component of that is actually building a really robust ecosystem as opposed to playing favorites, which is something that usually turns a lot of dApps off. But that's sort of where I stand on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think testnets are meant for you to experience the journey of failing fast. So I use Berachain as an example, right? Massive amounts of users, they had a design decision that they wanted to go through, and that design decision wasn't fulfilling the need of their users and their dApp builders. I split users in two things. One being your developer user, right? That's actually building on it. And then one being the user that's going to be interacting with it, right? And then the testnet is just empowering you to actually having, like Nirav said, it's just having the users and the developers try it and basically wail on it as hard as you can. And the thing with blockchains, these are meant to be forever existing products. So you want to have it robustly trusted. I can give you from a bridge perspective, right? I'm always looking at testnets, looking at people coming up with new networks. How robust is it? How many transactions are going through it? And that gives me insight of what new L2 or new network do I want to support? It's okay, they're really developing a user experience that this is the type of dApps that are going to be deploying in it. We really think that Across is a really good use case for consumer facing dApps. So I'm really excited to see how they evolve, and it gives insight for the whole ecosystem. So the testnet in general is important as a signal to me of what you're doing, what you're thinking, and then how do I, from a growth perspective, align with partners that are building, because everyone's building a new L2 and thing. And I want to serve customers because I'm actually bringing funds over to this network. I want to see how you guys have been faring well in your testing journey.
It's actually interesting because we are on this panel here. We do have a fair degree of difference. We have more kind of dev focused. We have those that are actually Web3 DeFi user focused. And then we also have kind of a hardware angle to it, which is intriguing. And when you hear these kind of conversations surrounding incentives, incentivized testnets, more and more hardware related kind of projects and products are going to be coming up here over the next couple of years for sure. So it's interesting to see your take on it, where you do have that very fundamental thing that once it goes, it kind of goes. And sure, you can make your updates along the way and drive it, but how does it kind of apply? How does this process that we're talking about here kind of apply to something where you have something physical like a phone?
Yeah. So we do a hybrid approach, right? We have a hardware, which is Web3 smartphone, one of the best in class, arguably the only one. But also we have the software layer, which is there's a chain that connects to the various of utilities. I think it's going to be, first of all, you need to focus on the first principle. Our first principle is to provide a hub, an entry point for Web3 consumer dApp revolution. Now, for the first principle, the hardware need to be, number one, functioning, right? It got to be performing. It got to serve, it has equipped with all the bells and whistles that serves the daily runner kind of a purpose. It cannot be doing like, oh, I use $100 as a farmer, right? You cannot say like, hey, I cannot, if you want to order, I have to wait for a year and a half to deliver. We need to look into the first principle because you want to be consumer. Consumer has very specific needs. We're not talking institution, you just click on the MetaMask and get it done. You have consumer to deal with. So it requires the first principle, you understand what you build. The whole team needs to be equipped with knowledge and experience to support that. So it's a very different beast. But also working with the partners to fulfill the needs for the use cases. So I think I'm lucky to have the team to back it up, but also I think it's as a new vertical, like you said, for this trend, and we're happy to be the first mover for that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when we're talking about bringing in a lot of users, a lot of it has to do with something like a device. That's what we've been seeing. That's the consumer side of things. And this is more like an open question, but we've been talking about this for a very long time now, that we're going to be bringing in a large amount of users to crypto in one way or another. We do have a large amount of users, but depends on what you define as large, I guess. But the open question is kind of when you have something here, we have a platform that is rolling out to people, where you have the chance of actually, this is a Web3 centric thing. It's not only for that, but it's primarily for that. How do you think about this kind of Web2 idea of one-click solution where it's supposed to be as simple as possible versus something that actually provides things like background safety and risk management and other things that comes with it? We'll have to have that kind of floating around a little bit here.
I don't think it's conflicting with each other. I mean, I think the Web3 application still should be as simple as one click away as possible. I think the key difference is that Web2 users are so centric on the content, on experience, because they use the phone as a consumer. Versus for Web3, everything's built around asset. In Web2, your social network is around content, videos or sound or audio or whatever. In Web3, it's all about asset. People are creators of asset, meaning that everything interacting with an asset through all the layers and the modules should be making the whole process interacting with an asset as simple as possible. So the layer and the security and everything should be working hand in hand with the hardware side of it as well.
I see Manny has something to say.
Yeah. Well, I really vibe with this like one click, making the user experience best for the user. So if you paying attention on Twitter, we've been going pretty hard on like an intent-based interoperability layer. I mean, we have ERC 7683 with Uniswap at the moment. And we're kind of thinking this in a way where you put an intent out. So I have an intent that I want to move $100 from Optimism to Base. And then there's a sophisticated relayer network that will fill it for the users, right? And it's two ways you think about it. One, for the developer saying they can just structure the message in a certain way. And then there's a relayer on the other side that's filling it, right? And then for the user, since we're intent-based and the relayers, it's not a mint and burn style bridge. It's literally giving that canonical asset to the user within a few seconds, right? We've also, from having that power of an intent-based interoperability layer, we built this product called Across Plus. And we've started to basically go to dApps and be there in their home. So when you do use like a DeFi product that there's a deposit feature, it doesn't really matter if your money sits on Optimism, Base, Arbitrum, Polygon. The user just cares that, let's say that Morpho Vault has a 10,000% APY, and they're like, well, I really want to take advantage of this, but what's the steps to do this? Oh, I got to go to Across or another bridge it over, and then I'm going to do the deposit. And we're thinking like, how do we take this user experience further? Is literally this should be able to bridge and deposit in one click. And that's been the the movement for across lately is how do we
A single
extend it?
pane of glass that
Yeah,
just allows you to
you hit the deposit button, the bridging happens underneath. Usually an average from our bridging data, average user is only bridging about $250 to like $5,000, usually a penny to a couple of pennies, and they want it instantly. And they want to do deposit, and they don't want any actions that they can forget. Me being a father, my kids distract me in the middle of it, and I do the bridge, but then I don't do the deposit. And then we thought, hey, and when people are going and using dApps on the internet, I don't want them to think if the dApp lives in Arbitrum, Polygon, or wherever. I want them to go to the best dApp, and their money can live wherever, and we should abstract that away. So Across is really thinking about the user experience and just started to bring it to the dApp level and how we use fundamentally user behavior right now. Like when you use an app on the internet, do you really care if that dApp is hosted by AWS? Do you care if it's on GCP? No, you don't care. That's the fundamental dApp. And that's where Across is going. And we want the bridges to like quote unquote disappear, but just the user should never have to deal with them. We integrate with the dApp level, and then the dApps can just set an intent-based message, and then the relay or market takes care of it for them.
Yeah, I think one of the
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that Roy alluded to was I kind of agree with, but the biggest problem is if you look at Web2, dApps across the board are composable. Like you log in with a single sign-on across everything. That does the weird part about Web3 is the whole value proposition of it is the composability. But it seems because of how much sort of infrastructure we have and how many different competing tech stacks that we've lost a little bit of that composability in favor of scalability. And so one of the things that we're really solving is how do you take this identity layer and basically make it interoperable across all the chains? One of the reasons why I think Manny just alluded to was dApps don't really succeed because the attention spans in blockchain are so short. If you think about the Web2 sort of philosophy, it's, release an MVP, test it, release an alpha, test it, release a beta, test it, and effectively you refine until you get an amazing product like Instagram. One of the problems in Web3 is the attention spans are so short. So it's like MVP, launch token, bunch of people farm the token and then migrate over somewhere else. And so the dApps actually never go through that cycle of iterating and becoming better. And so I think somebody said earlier, like listen to consumers, I think it was Glenn. But the other thing that makes this really important is the minimum number of clicks it takes to interact with anything is how we should think about blockchain in general for the retail side of things. Sorry, Mathieu, didn't mean to.
So just want to say, well, first, infinite composability, that vision basically is not happening because we have way more than one chain, right? And so you're talking about user intents, and I think what really interests me here or intrigues me is that in a world where you have multiple chains, many chains, and where you want to facilitate the life of users by executing their intents across chains, suddenly the secure transactions that you want to orchestrate, that makes the blockchain programming, that makes the financial transactions like way more like traditional finance, because everything becomes a dialogue. And so, or in a way, everything becomes this kind of on-chain game where you say, hey, I would like to do that. Who knows how to do it? And by the way, here's some down payment to prove that I really want to do it. And then somebody answers, say, hey, yeah, okay, cool. I know how to do it. This is how I would start. So give me more money and I'll actually do it. Or, hey, I have a transaction that is ready. I can buy your NFT in Solana. And so everything becomes a dialogue. And so my point is that suddenly, and I don't know if people are already realizing it, but suddenly latency is super important for the efficiency, the financial efficiency of the system. You can see that the difference between like 10 seconds, 1 second, or a tenth of a second is a game changer for that kind of system.
Yeah, I mean, for Across, that's what we've been really focused on. We like to tout that we're the fastest and cheapest. And speed is the number one thing. I think users in general panic if it's even a minute or two. And like Across's mission is being the relayers are ultra competitive and they try to fill under 10 seconds, sometimes even 2 seconds, right? And we're trying to even get to the point where we're like milliseconds, because I think someone said about 200 milliseconds or less, it feels instant for the user. So that's where we're driving to. And then we're driving to a world where you go to the dApp level, you don't even think about the bridge, it's instant, and then you get the deposit instance, and the user experience to the dApp level increases. And that's all I think is really matters, that the uptick of dApps go up, and the infrastructure supports dApp, and then infrastructures get out of the spotlight and we focus on like dApps succeeding. So then people think of Web3 as like, this is where I interact, this is where I do financial things. They don't think about the clunky things to move around.
Yeah. Actually, we can segue into kind of the last portion that I want to touch upon here. And we've been talking a little bit here then about the simplicity of it, the one-click aspect of it, the speed of it, that it needs to be almost instantaneous. And there are other factors underlying that as well, like just a general public perception of, is this safe? Where do we think here now? And I want to start off with Glenn. What are the developments that are kind of been driving the most here in UX? And what do you think the future holds in this particular space? We have a generational shift going on. We have already a distrust towards things like banks and banking applications and then collection of data. So yeah, I would love to get that take from you, and then floor is open for the rest of it.
Yep. I think, the way to approach this, the way that I would look at it, my mental model is sort of the three different pillars. Is like, A is like, how are users interacting with something? So that's the wallets, it's the front end, it's the UIs. What are the things that they're interacting? Where are they living on? And then also, like, to Matty's point, where is everything else and how are they being connected to each other, right? So I think some of the big UX improvements we've seen over the years, from Ethereum to L2s to Solana to next-gen VMs, like Movement, all these other chains, the performance and scalability and throughput of these chains has risen. And as that has come, you get lower costs, you get faster execution, you get theoretically a 1,000 times better user experience. Like trading shitcoins on Solana is far better than doing anything on Ethereum. Even if that's not the use case you're targeting, but like the quick execution, the ease of interaction, the aggregation that's all being built, like those are all parts of the user experience that are very important and are all like gradually improving over time. I think all three areas are being developed, concurrently and having good progress. You see like the passkey logins, the account abstracted wallets for onboarding new users. I know Narav has some cool stuff going on with that. You see, basically this interoperable world of soon to be one-click deposits. We're focused on building a couple RWA vaults in the next couple months. And, once Across is, what's it called again? Across Plus. Across Plus is live. We'll definitely have
It is live.
It's live?
Live now, so please.
Can we get a VIP access?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Have one-click deposits into strategies. So I think, it's just a gradual improvement. One thing that has probably been hindering it is like the fragmentation of investment and builders. People obviously picking different languages, different ecosystems, different views of the world, and sort of building towards some things. Like some people I know are very against account abstraction because of some security risks that it brings up for the users. Some people are, 100% long it because they think it's the only way to onboard next generation. So I think, we as an industry could do a better job of kind of standardizing our beliefs or views as to what needs to happen and making it happen quicker. But that being said, there's still a lot of progress being made in the right direction.
Yeah, I think really quickly to chime in on Clet's point, he framed it really well, where we've seen so many improvements on the user onboarding on account abstraction. I'm not going to say it's amazing yet, but you've seen a lot better improvements on that. On the bridges point, you're starting to see a lot more atomic execution, finality, as Manny mentioned. The part that's lagged weirdly is the actual dApp side of things. And I think a large component of that is what I mentioned earlier. And one of the things that we're really focused on is how do you bring Web2 communities into Web3? And a large component of that is around UX, which, as Glenn mentioned, is getting better, but it's really around data and knowing and understanding your users and where they live. And that's one of the things we really prioritize. And I think the next generation of blockchain will be focused on the dApps as opposed to all the infrastructure improvements, which have been benefited in the last couple cycles.
Support your local app builders.
Roy or Mathieu, any thoughts about this as well in terms of?
Yeah, well, I agree, but I think we can still improve the infrastructure to support dApps, especially the reactivity side of things with Linera.
Yeah, I think we're here to form a Avengers Alliance, right, to support other developers. And my job, again, is working on down the food chain to make sure we reach the consumer as easy as possible, and also keep on notificating people that, hey, this is these various utilities can use.
Yeah, I agree. I think Glenn said something interesting is like standard. And I think we need to start standardizing things. I mean, why does the internet work really fundamentally well? We follow standards, right? And this is, Across his like big mission is this ERC 7683 standard is like one easy way for developer user experience. Like we can't forget about the developers because they are the main users at the moment, and then the actual user. So like across is trying to cover both sides, and we're trying to build this in an open way, meaning if across disappeared tomorrow, the intent relay or solver network would still be robust and it could exist as a. So this is where we should be all going. Try to figure out a standard that we all love and we can somewhat loosely agree on. If it is an intent-based messaging standard, we all kind of confine to it as a dApp level. And then the users are actually getting a better experience because we're all building towards one thing, just like how we build a Web2 internet.
Okay, Matty, hot take. What's the best smart contract language that we should all use then?
Solidity.
I think composability is king is, I think, the one thing that it seems like everybody on this panel agrees on. And building the entire stack to be composable should be the focus for this cycle.
Lovely. We're actually running out of time here. Yeah, it is interesting to see here now because going through the events. I've been in the industry since 2014 now, and whatever. It's been a change in how people are kind of viewing. It used to be kind of if it wasn't decentralization, then there was pretty much nothing against it. Standardization was not the cool thing to do. But yeah, I think we're definitely moving toward a world where we understand that standardization doesn't have to mean centralization, and just it don't always have to go against the grain. There's a world we live in here, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
G-move.
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 You just said solidity.
That's okay.
I'm telling you.
We'll cut that out.
It's all about like, working openly, and theoretically, if you code in whatever language, as long as you're using an intent-based standard, it's all good. It all funnels to the same thing. So maybe we have flexibility on languages, but we try to use one standard that we all can kind of talk to.
If we're doing the GMs, I have to say G microchains.
There you go. GM microchains. GM intents.
Good morning. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.